truth is, the natural world is changing and we are totally dependent on that world. It's the only home we have. So said David Attenborough, the renowned naturalist and broadcaster who's dedicated his life to protecting wildlife. Hi, I'm Charles. I'm a psychiatrist with a special interest in diets that help to protect your heart and also diets that help to protect the planet. And coincidentally, they're the same diets.
Absolutely. Hi guys, I'm Sinead. I'm a student of public health. Also very interested in diets and how our diet affects the planet as well as our own heart health. So we gave examples of diets that we are recommending in the first 3 episodes of the podcast. So if you'd like to look back on it, I definitely recommend that. This week we are continuing our discussion about climate change and what is driving it. Also the effects of the destruction of forests and natural habitats around the world, and how animal agriculture significantly contributes to climate change and what we can do to help.
Great, so thanks, Sinead. So just to recap where we left off last episode, Sinead, we were looking at how greenhouse gases have been increasing consistently in the last 5 decades or so. Those greenhouse gases that are causing the main problems are mainly carbon dioxide and methane.
Yeah.
And the main 2 causes of the increase in greenhouse gases are, number 1, the burning of fossil fuels, but animal agriculture actually comes second as a cause.
Yeah.
And we also were saying how the Earth's temperature has been increasing steadily. A lot of this extra heat is absorbed by the sea, and sea temperatures are also rising. A friend of mine from Brazil said that the average summer water temperature there is 28 degrees, which is incredible. But the land temperatures are rising even more quickly, and they're causing heat waves and forest fires on scales that have never been seen before. And the temperature in the Arctic is increasing most of all. In fact, it's heating at twice the rate of the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And for this reason, it's normally covered by snow and permafrost.
Yeah.
But that Arctic snow and permafrost is being affected.
Yeah, melting.
So those northern regions, when there is covering of snow and permafrost, the whiteness of those reflects the sun, and that helps reduce the Earth's temperature. But as the snow melts due to global warming, the dark Earth below the permafrost is exposed. And as you know, dark colours absorb heat much more, and that causes the increase in temperature, particularly there. So, and the other factor that happens as the permafrost melts, there's trapped methane and carbon dioxide in it that's released or that's under it, and that further adds to the greenhouse gases and climate change. So now is a crucial time for us to act to reduce the production of greenhouse gases. I don't want to frighten people, but if not, the results will be or can be cataclysmic.
Absolutely.
The United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, produced a report in 2019 called the 10th Emissions Gap Report, which stated that if emissions continue to increase at their present rate, the world's temperature will increase by as much as 4 degrees centigrade by the end of this century. So as the temperatures increase, extreme weather events increase, and they've increased greatly since the 1950s. Droughts, heat waves, excessive or reduced monsoons, hurricanes, typhoons, floods, and severe storms are much more common. Wind speeds have trebled in the last decade. Sea levels are rising faster than ever, and this is accelerating because of melting Arctic ice. And the most worrying thing is that above a global temperature rise of 1.5 degrees centigrade, the danger of irreversible tipping points being reached becomes increasingly likely. So we were saying last time, what was the significance of the 1.5 degrees centigrade? That's comparing the present temperatures to what we call the pre-industrial temperatures, which they were roughly occurred between 1850 and 1900 when accurate records were first kept. So you pointed out last time that we're already dangerously close to the 1.5 increase over that level.
I think it's 1.44.
1.44.
Yeah.
And so it's getting nearer. And what are tipping points? Tipping points are irreversible changes in climate.
Yeah.
An example of this would be a catastrophic effect of melting permafrost rapidly releasing large amounts of carbon dioxide and methane, which is stored under that permafrost. And then a vicious cycle of greenhouse gas release is set up because those greenhouse gases cause the world temperature to increase, melting more ice, and a vicious circle is set up. And that can make the Earth what's called a hothouse Earth. And then even if increases in greenhouse gases emissions were stopped...
At that stage.
Yeah, at that stage, it would not stop the vicious circle from continuing and making large parts of the Earth uninhabitable.
So that's kind of an overview of what we talked about last time and the kind of grim science behind climate change. So can you explain for our listeners how this affects wildlife then?
Yes, well, we've already started to see devastating effects of global warming on nature and animal species. And sadly, these are only a foretaste of what is to come if we don't take action. I know this is all sounding a bit alarmist and negative, but the key thing is there is action that we can take. There's enormous action that's been taken by governments, and as we're going to be talking about, you can take tremendous action on an individual level by just changing your behavior, what you eat, how you travel, stuff like that. So I don't want to get too negative because there is. But
I think it is important to preface action with the reality of the situation.
Yeah. Because if people don't realise the reality, and many don't, we're just going to keep on until it's too late.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So one example was that I saw of the effects on wildlife was the devastating, unprecedented bushfires that occurred in Australia at the end of 2019. And I found it heartbreaking on television to see hundreds of scorched corpses of koala bears and other wildlife following these unprecedented fires. And it was estimated that 1 billion wild animals perished in the fires. And so then this was like other fires around the world. It's a pattern of increasing forest fires caused by global warming. As the temperature goes up, there's drier conditions, there's hotter conditions, and any spark, even lightning, can set off a forest fire. Of course, humans often are responsible as well. And because it's drier and there's less water, it's more likely that forest fires become devastating. And in North America, the area of what they call boreal forests or natural forests lost to forest fires annually has almost tripled since 1970. And other ways animals are affected. We see pictures of starving polar bears clinging to melting ice sheets. They're also victims of global warmings. In the oceans, acidification of the water is occurring because of increased atmospheric carbon dioxide levels.
Yeah.
And this has led to the destruction of coral reefs. And 25% of marine life is actually dependent on coral reefs.
Yeah.
So when these are bleached and die, the animals also die. So climate change has also led to lower oxygen levels in oceans in general, and oxygen is obviously necessary for marine life to thrive, and the lack of oxygen has led to areas called marine dead zones in the ocean where the natural wildlife has been killed because of the lack of oxygen. And climate change has already led to the extinction of a number of animal species, and many more species are under threat. Many animals require specific temperatures, conditions to live and reproduce. And an example is the Australian white lemuroid possum, and it couldn't survive at temperatures over 30 degrees centigrade, and it's now extinct since the summer of 2005, when that temperature was exceeded for a long time. And similarly, the Bramble-K melomis, also from Australia, a type of rodent, was declared extinct in 2016 after it could no longer be found in that part of Australia's Torres Strait. And these are the first known animal extinctions to be directly linked to climate change.
Yeah.
But even worse, global warming in the worst case scenario could trigger an apocalyptic mass extinction if it's not kept in check, where over 50% of animal and plant species of the planet will become extinct. And this was predicted by scientists of the University of York. And humans wouldn't necessarily be exempt from this event. And, we kind of think we're invulnerable as a species, but when you get things like the recent COVID pandemic, which killed hundreds of thousands of people, it shows that humans are not as invincible as we think we are sometimes.
Yeah, so that's the kind of devastating impact that climate change has on wildlife. So we see the increased temperatures cause certain species not to be able to survive. But let's talk about the effects on humans.
Yeah.
And possibly migration due to climate disasters.
Yeah. So as global warming increases, the effects on humans becomes more profound, and the effects are most severe in countries close to the equator. So in particular, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Southern Europe, Australia, North and South America, and they're already significantly affected by climate change. Lack of water in countries like Africa leads to migration and conflict all around the world, in fact. And migration can occur both within a country and between countries because of climate change. Migration leads to further tensions and conflicts, and droughts and crop failures due to climate change increase poverty in countries that are already often very poor. Global warming, and we know this from the membership of the Irish Doctors for the Environment, global warming has adverse effects on human health, including malnutrition and starvation, but also the spread of certain diseases such as dengue fever and malaria. These various problems are also exacerbated by population growth and increased demands for water, which is an ever-dwindling supply in many of these areas.
So it's a tough thing to talk about, actually. It's a tough thing to get in terms of it, but I think it's important to know what we're up against. So we're just going to take a quick break now before we get into what we can do to combat global warming. So we'll see you in a few.
If you find what we've been talking about interesting, you can find a lot more details in my book called Save Your Heart, Lose Weight and Help Save the Planet, which is available on Amazon.
So now we're going to talk about exceptional individual, I would say. I'm a massive fan of this woman's work. Greta Thunberg.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about Greta in a second, but if I could just take this moment to encourage any young people listening to join climate action groups as action, for me anyway, and I think it's been proven it's an antidote to despair. This can be a very hard thing to talk about, to listen to learn about. I remember when I first heard about climate change, I was in secondary school and I was just shocked that more people weren't acting on it, So when I joined Irish Doctors for the Environment, I felt that it was really good for me actually to be surrounded by people with similar kind of interests in combating climate change. And I think for everyone in the climate action sphere, Greta is a huge role model,
Yeah. And if you're in a group you feel not alone, you can be very kind of isolated and almost despairing. But when you're with a group of people who are also trying to take action, it makes you feel much more positive.
Yeah.
So Greta Thunberg is a remarkable young woman. She's grown a bit older since I first came across her. She's played an important role in bringing the issue of the need for urgent action to prevent global warming to public attention. At the age of 13, she started protesting with a placard saying, school strike for climate outside the Swedish parliament, saying there was a climate emergency and calling for governments to take immediate action. And she encouraged other school children to strike from school to protest the lack of action to combat climate change. Her movement rapidly gained popularity, and soon teenage children around the world were staging similar protests.
And her group is called Fridays for Future, and there still is active Fridays for Future groups all around the world. If anybody listening wants to get involved, any young people listening want to get involved.
Very good, yeah. Her activism has brought about much media attention, has brought climate action strongly to the attention of governments, and she's known for her direct style of oratory, and she addressed the 2018 United Nations Climate Change Conference. She famously sailed across the Atlantic to address the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit so that she would be showing the world she was travelling in a green way, not just it's easy to jump on a plane and go there, but she wanted to make a point. And when she was there, she said, "How dare you to the world leaders for not doing enough to stop climate change."
I think she said as well, "You have stolen my dreams and my childhood." Yeah, just very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So moving on, let's talk about animal agriculture, because this is very relevant to what we talk about on our podcast.
Yeah.
How our diets actually affect the climate.
Yeah.
And obviously we've talked in previous episodes how it affects your heart health.
Yeah.
But this is specifically how these diets can impact the climate. So let's talk about animal agriculture first.
To sum up the link, it's what's good for your heart and health is also good for the planet.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are very harmonious kind of goals. So the effects of animal agriculture, as we've said, animal agriculture, which is world farming basically of animals, contributes significantly to global climate change through its production of large amounts of greenhouse gas emissions called GHGs. And there are very widely differing figures of what percentage of greenhouse gases come from animal agriculture. They're as wide as from 14% to 51%, although most estimates now would be between 15 and 20%, according to different sources.
So that's the percent of global greenhouse gases attributed to animal agriculture.
Yeah. So, according to a detailed report in a book from the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, in 2006, called Livestock's Long Shadow, Environmental Issues and Options, it reported that 18% of greenhouse gases globally are produced by the livestock sector. They also describe how livestock production occupies 70% of all agricultural land, so it's the great majority of agricultural land, and it occupies land for grazing animals and raising livestock, occupies 30% of the land surface of the planet.
Oh, wow.
Also, the expansion of the livestock sector is a key factor in deforestation, especially in Latin America. Mm-hmm. And the livestock sector accounts for 8% of global water usage, and that's mainly for the irrigation of animal feed crops. And it's also probably the largest sectoral source of water pollution. Mm-hmm. Other calculations from environmental experts have put the global contribution of meat production at a far higher level, and one actually put it as 51%, or the majority of greenhouse gases coming from everywhere. But I should say that that's really generally not an accepted figure now. But it was a very important article that they wrote in World Watch, Robert Goodland and Jeff Anhang. And Robert Goodland was the lead environmental advisor at the World Bank, and Jeff Anhang was a research and officer and environmental specialist also at the World Bank. So the great disparity between what they estimated and what others scientists found was one of the issues was whether or not the respiration or the breathing of animals which produce carbon dioxide should be included in the figures or not.
Okay.
And that accounted to, so in other words, when you breathe in, your lungs give out carbon dioxide, and the same with animals, and that adds, when there's lots of them, as there are millions, that adds to greenhouse gases. So the 51% is the 51%, as I said, is not generally accepted. Okay. Scientists in 2011 wrote an article refuting it. in animal feed science and technology, and they agreed with the 18% figure from the FAO. Their article, Livestock and Greenhouse Gas Emissions, they argued that the carbon dioxide given off by the respiration or breathing of animals should not be included because it's offset by the plant material on which they're feeding, which it traps an approximately equal amount of carbon dioxide. So, in other words, they're saying it's a balance, that the pastures that they feed on and the carbon trap caused by the production of grain that they feed on offsets the carbon dioxide that when they're breathing out.
But like, I'd like to say like 20% is still huge. Like
Yes.
20% is still too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, it
So-
is. Oh, it is. Oh no.
They can argue.
They're arguing against the 51%.
Yeah, against the 51%,
we'll come on to a minute. There's very strong evidence now that, in fact, that's also an overestimate. It doesn't.
Yeah.
For instance, the pasture land, the grass that you see cows and cattle and sheep feeding on. It's not a great carbon trap. Not. When you compare it to a field of trees are
exactly.
amazing
Carbon
traps of
sinks,
carbon.
like,
Because when you think how many leaves are on a tree and they're all spread out in this great... I was last week in Madrid, and it was the average temperature was around 31 degrees.
Yeah.
And just to stand under a tree was so cool and refreshing.
Yeah.
And, I really admired the trees because Madrid has quite a lot of trees. But when you think about it, a tree is an amazing mechanism for taking in carbon
Capturing
dioxide and giving off oxygen. What could be a better thing than that?
And a lot of trees are being cut down for animal agriculture. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, 70%, as we've said, of the Amazon rainforest is cut down purely to provide grazing for cattle.
Oh, wow.
So, and actually people now are trying to find ways to capture carbon using different scientific techniques. They're even trying to inject carbon dioxide into rocks and as a way of trapping it.
Yeah.
But here we have this wonderful mechanism, the tree, that will provide shade, that it will, they look very nice, and they trap enormous amounts of carbon dioxide, and in exchange they give off oxygen, which we need. So trees are a wonderful thing, and it's just such a tragedy that they're being destroyed. Forests are being destroyed around the world at an unprecedented rate.
Yeah.
I've forgotten where we were.
So we were talking about animal agriculture, and there's a little bit of a debate on whether the offset that the breathing, the carbon dioxide emitted by the breathing of animals might be offset by the actual grass that they feed on or whatever they're feeding on. So
the scientists who are critical of Goodland and Anhang also looked at the calculations of the emissions from the change of land usage.
Okay.
So the two authors in the original paper stated that, and again it's like what we've been saying, whereas a rainforest stores 200 tons of carbon per hectare, the moderately degraded grassland on which animals graze only stores about 8 tons. So your trees saved 200 tons of carbon, whereas grass only 8 tons. You can see the enormous difference between them. And furthermore, if forest is destroyed, as it is being, we said in the last episode that the Amazon rainforest is being destroyed at a rate of 60 football pitches per hour.
Terrifying.
And when that's destroyed, that also releases a large amount of carbon dioxide, just the destruction process. So, but the other side of the coin is, if, on the other hand, animal agriculture were reduced globally, a proportion of that grassland would no longer be needed. Supposing, as a mass movement, people started eating less meat or going vegetarian, we wouldn't need to be cutting down
Trees for new agriculture.
and in fact, even some land then could be given back to reforesting and making it natural again. And so the regeneration of forests and natural habitats. And that would enable vast amounts of carbon absorption by trees, as we've said. So, and they also describe how some of this reclaimed grazing land could also be used for human crops instead of producing feed for animals or producing biofuels. And they estimate that 4.2% of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide could be added by using land to graze livestock and grow. But by using the land that's currently used for livestock to instead be used for reforestation and more environmentally friendly uses. But anyway, the scientists are also critical of those two authors because they said you can't include potential uses in a scientific calculation of how much the contribution is. So, and another factors, as we were describing there, is how much each hectare of forest which is destroyed, for instance, cutting down the rainforest, is converted is converted to a hectare of grassland. That process in itself gives off a lot of greenhouse gases. And we've talked about the enormous carbon capturing ability of trees, and they'd be destroyed at an alarming rate. As I've said, 70% of the destroyed Amazon rainforest is being used to provide grazing for cattle. And this applies not only to the Amazon, but natural habitats and forests around the world are being destroyed to provide grazing and food for livestock. Another factor which causes debate and where they're critical of the two authors is methane is beside carbon dioxide, the other main greenhouse gas. And there's dispute amongst how much of a global warming potential methane has. What is global warming potential? That is when you relate a gas or a compound to carbon dioxide for its ability to cause global warming. And methane is calculated as being 25 times more stronger than carbon dioxide in causing climate change. But it also depends on how long what kind of time frame you base the calculation on.
Okay.
So the global warming potential of methane can vary between 25 and 72, depending on if you're measuring it for 20 years or 100 years. So I don't want to get too technical, but that's caused a lot of arguments and debate as to but
the actual impact of animal agriculture.
Yeah, but if you can reduce methane is like a low-hanging fruit because it will have an enormous effect. Because it's 25 to 70 times as powerful as carbon dioxide in increasing the climate change. If you can reduce methane, you'll be doing an awful lot to help combat it.
So we've covered an awful lot today.
Yeah.
We've talked about the science behind global warming, talked about a little bit about Greta Thunberg and animal agriculture, importantly as well, which is very relevant to what we talk about on this podcast. So I think it might be time for a recipe of the week.
Okay, your favourite time.
My favourite time of the podcast.
Good.
So what have you got for us today?
Yes, well, so this week the recipe of the week is Tuscan vegetable minestrone soup.
Ooh, I love soup.
Yeah, and this is an easy to make Italian style of vegetable soup with noodles, which makes it more substantial. Different vegetables can be used when they're available, so that they're not hard and fast ingredients.
Okay.
This recipe serves 4 people, so these are the ingredients. The ingredients I'm being given in terms of cupfuls, and a US cup is 240 milliliters. So you can also use a measuring jar, and just 240 is the level to look for. So the first is 2 cups of diced green cabbage, sliced small, half a cup of diced carrots, half a cup of diced celery, half a cup of diced peeled large potato, 1 cup of canned pulped tomatoes, or else finely sliced fresh tomatoes, 2 cans of vegetable soup that you can get in the supermarket. For example, I used Tesco's low-fat vegetable and lentil soup, and it's an easy recipe to make. Continuing the ingredients, half a cup of diced courgettes, or as Americans say, zucchini, 1 can of kidney beans, 1/4 cup of whole grain penne pasta, 1 tablespoon of minced oregano, and salt and pepper to taste, but go easy on the salt for heart health. And the method is, first of all, place the cabbage, the onions, the carrots, the celery, the potato, the tomatoes, and the vegetable soup all together in a large pot, and bring them to a boil and then to a simmer over a moderate heat. Cover and continue to simmer and cook until the vegetables are half cooked, which takes about 15 minutes. Then add the courgettes and the beans with the juice and the wholemeal penne pasta, and then cover again and simmer until the vegetables are tender and the pasta is cooked, and that takes about another 15 minutes. And then finally add the oregano and seasoning to taste with pepper and salt. And that's it.
Fantastic. So it sounds great, Charles. Another tasty filling soup to try.
Yeah. And I like soups because they're a great snack if you have them with brown bread and a little flora lighter, and they're very filling. That's a lunch in itself, especially if it's a kind of hearty soup like that.
Yeah, I'm famous for my love of soup in my house.
Good. And the other good thing about soup is you can store it. You can just put it in the fridge,
absolutely,
in the saucepan, or you can put it in little plastic containers and even freeze it and use it later.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to put our recipes.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting you, Charles. All our recipes will be put up on our social media, Your Heart, Our Planet, on Facebook, Instagram, and of course, LinkedIn.
And finally, if you find what we've been talking about interesting, you'll find a lot more details in my book called Save Your Heart, Lose Weight and Help Save the Planet, which is available on Amazon as a paperback and a Kindle. And that's all for this episode. We look forward to seeing you again for the next episode, and bye until then.
Yeah, we'll be talking more about animal agriculture, and all things related to climate health. So that's a bye-bye from me as well. Bye now.